Perfect. It looks like we are live on YouTube and Facebook, so just give me one moment, please. Excellent. So I think we're going to go ahead and get kicked off and started as Facebook is starting to alert folks that we are on here. For those of you that are starting to see this and are tuning in, go ahead and let me know if you can see us and hear us fine by giving me a thumbs up or a quick comment. I think that was the quickest that I actually ever shared that out. So that's like a record time. So for those of you that are hopping on here, we're going to go ahead and get kicked off and started. I am Juliette Abdel, President and CEO of the Westminster Chamber of Commerce, and I'm pleased to continue to bring to you on a daily basis our live broadcasts. Now, for those of you that are coming back to us, welcome and good morning. Thank you for sharing out our information and tuning in to gain a wealth of ideas and resources and knowledge about what's in around our community and of course around our state. If it's your first time on our page, then I want to encourage you that you go ahead and give us that thumbs up. Make sure that you're following us so that you can get those timely alerts when we do go live, and that you can engage with us into the future, of course. Now, most of these videos are going to be available in the video section of this broadcast. You can definitely find it dating back into the month of March on our Facebook page, of course. At the same time that we are streaming this on our Facebook platform, we are also streaming it on our YouTube channel as well. That's Westminster Chamber of Commerce. And if you are social media savvy, have no worry. We are on Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn, Westminster Chamber of Commerce. And I promise we do not try to send out the exact same information on all of the platforms. So you won't get bored. Now, for those of you that are also curious about all things COVID-related resources and updates and things of that nature outside of our emails, you can go to westminsterchamber.biz, COVID-19-updates, where you can see a lot of that information included in one space for you, so you can simplify your time and access to those resources. Now, these videos I mentioned to you have been available to you since the month of March. You can find them at any point and binge watch. Today's broadcast is actually with one of our partners, and Brock and I have recently interacted and met, but this is a project that we've both been passionate about for some time. So I do want to introduce him and kind of who he represents with us, and then I will mute myself, and at that point, Brock, the floor is yours to take it away, wow us, give us everything that we need to know, and then we'll take up any comments or questions. So the best way that people can engage with us, of course, is through the comment section of this broadcast. So as you're hopping on, give us that good morning message like your board chairman, Brian Dice has. Let us know any compliments or comments that you might have. You know I'm a sucker for those. And then, of course, if you think of questions as Brock is sharing information or material, type those in so that we can get to it after he shared some of that information as well our way. So Brock Herzberg, which I know I nailed his last name, is with the Colorado Business Coalition for Immigration Solutions. And I'm so excited to have him on here. Brock, please go ahead and just get us started by sharing a little bit about the organization, you, and then let us know everything we need to know.
Sure. Thank you, Juliette, and thank you to the Westminster Chamber of Commerce for, one, being a partner, which I will explain a little bit more in detail later, but and for asking me to come and speak with you all. I know there are so many things right now that are attention demanding and attention grabbing. So I appreciate you all taking some time to talk about some immigration efforts that I am working on. Juliette is correct. I am here today representing the Colorado Business Coalition for Immigration Solutions. I am not good at making short acronyms, so I just call this CBCIS or CBCIS. So if I abbreviate that, or for easier reference, just refer to it as our coalition, of which the Westminster Chamber of Commerce is a valued partner of ours, and we greatly appreciate that. Just a brief little background on myself. I am a native Coloradan. Shockingly, I was born and raised in Eastern Colorado. I live in Denver right now, but where I was born and raised was, if you could draw a straight line from the capital and go straight east about 105 miles. That is where I grew up, on a farm in Eastern Colorado. I grew up closer to the Kansas border and to the Nebraska border than I did to Denver, but I am a Colorado native. Agriculture is my roots. I got my higher education degrees at Colorado State University. So I'm very passionate about Colorado, about what impacts us as business owners, as citizens, all things that Colorado citizens are impacted by and feel. Today, with the Colorado Business Coalition for Immigration Solutions, I had talked to Juliet about just updating you all at the Chamber about who we are. And really, I'm sure some of you are probably asking yourself, why in the time of this pandemic would we want to be talking about immigration reform, how it impacts us? I know you all know how it impacts you on a daily level at your own businesses, in your own communities, maybe even in your own families. But now with this pandemic that we're dealing with, and I think we all saw the governor and the mayor of Denver yesterday start to tighten up some things, a lot of you may be wondering, why is this an important topic for now? And I think that now is an even better case than before to make an effort and a push for solid immigration reform. A little bit about the coalition. We are a group of businesses all over the state, all over cross-section industries, from banking to hotel and lodging, to dairy farmers, to home builders, to plumbers, to individual contract companies that work with home builders, that work with a number of you in your communities and in your businesses. We are a group of businesses that were brought together, and chambers are a member of ours, trade associations. It's a come one, come all. We just want to continue to have this conversation about immigration reform. Where all of this really started, Juliet, was, I don't think it's a surprise to anybody. The federal government has been dealing with immigration reform for probably 30 years. And by dealing with it, I mean they really haven't done a lot around immigration reform. It's such a hot button issue at the federal level. It's a hot button issue at the dinner table, depending on who you are dining with. But about 8 years ago, it was right around 2012, 2014, when Senator Bennet was elected into the U.S. Senate, he had really asked of the business community in Colorado, and again, by business, I mean all types of business, all types of trade associations, to really come together to help Congress try to address the issue of immigration reform. Out of that request was born the Colorado Compact, which you can read more about. And Juliet, I can send you some of the websites, or the website that we have. It's cocompact.org, cocompact.org. So when Senator Bennet came to the business community in Colorado and said, we need a push from all of you, knowing that what a dairy farmer wants is fundamentally what the owner of a dry cleaning business wants, that is fundamentally owner of the people who run and operate Vail ski resorts. All of Colorado is impacted by immigration and or the lack of immigration reform at the federal level. So out of that, a group of people, and as of today, I was looking at our list this morning before I logged on to this, we have about 45, just over 45 members from across the state. And again, that's all on our website, of our coalition partners that have really come together around some parameters to help guide the discussion in Colorado. And we really feel that if we can lead a grassroots conversation, that will filter up to what we need our congressional delegation to hear, and not just those that represent Westminster and the surrounding areas. Representative Perlmutter has been great on this issue, but really for the entire Colorado delegation to understand that as a whole, the business community in Colorado recognizes that with a lack of reform, it's devastating to our economy and to our small businesses, our medium businesses, and our large businesses. So the group came together, and like I said, back when Senator Bennet was a part of the Gang of Eight, we came up with the Colorado Compact. And for Colorado, the business community, that meant crafting and dealing with legislation in DC that took into account all the things that you would think of when you hear about immigration reform. We have to take into account the workers that are here. We have to take into account the national security issues that naturally come with an immigration reform type of conversation. We have to come at it with a lens of these are individuals and families that we are talking about. This is not necessarily a commodity for us to be talking about. These are families, individuals in our community that are not just in our community, they're working in our communities. They're contributing to our economy, not just at the Westminster level, they're paying taxes into the state of Colorado, into their local governments. So what Senator Bennet really had asked us to do was to try and see, even though knowing that when certain pieces of legislation come up, there may be some parts of that legislation that makes some of our coalition uncomfortable, and some of our coalition may strongly support one aspect of it and not another. Where we found that with immigration reform, people tend to pull away from the table if they see something of a broader package that maybe doesn't fit their criteria or their specific industry. A lot of times groups will tend to shy away from that conversation and say, no, that doesn't really impact me, so I don't know that my voice matters. What the coalition really wants to get the point across is all of our partner voices matter. We have to hear from everyone that's impacted by this. And we love our membership. Our group is free. It's easy to join. So we really came together to try and speak with one voice on immigration reform. We're very fortunate. We partner with the New American Economy, who is a bipartisan research and advocacy organization that really can help guide the conversations that not only we have as a coalition, but also that our congressional delegation has. Some of the information and data that NAE has been great about providing is on their website, there's a tool called Map the Impact, where you can drill down by Colorado, you can drill down by your congressional district and see what the numbers are in your area and how the immigrant population is really helping lead and power the economy. And I think some of the data that's played out already, I think it's kind of bearing true for Colorado as a state, and it narrows down into our congressional districts. Some of the data that New American Economy has put out is about 1 in 10 Coloradans is an immigrant, whether they were born here or they came here at some point and are now functioning and contributing to our economy, to our local societies and cultures, and they're doing that on a state level. I think you can see some of that same information playing out where Westminster sits as well, is that they're, from some of the data that the New American Economy has come out with, about 1 in 10 in the 7th congressional at least. And it's, like I said, it's kind of true throughout all of Colorado. About 1 in 10 of the people in the workforce in our area is an immigrant citizen who has, like I said, either born here or came here and is now working in our state and in our local and statewide businesses. So we partner with the New American Economy to really help guide and buttress up some of the arguments that we're making, that this is such a critical issue and that our congressional delegation can feel confident when they go to DC and hopefully advocate for us about immigration reform, that there's data backing up what we are telling them, and there's data backing up the arguments that they're making at the federal government. So to kind of come full circle to when I introduced myself, why now? Why talk about immigration reform now in the midst of a global pandemic, in the midst of a national pandemic and a state and local pandemic that we are all feeling the effects of? I don't think much of this will come as a surprise to you all, because there's been some press coverage on it, and I'm sure we've all just been hearing it in our local communities. Our workforce is made up, and now with what the state and the federal governments have been doing, we now are very familiar with the terms essential workers that are allowed to, even if some part of the economies are shut down, we have essential workers that the government is saying we need those people to go to work in order for the economy not to completely collapse upon itself. You will not be surprised, some of those essential workers, and this plays out in some of the data that New American Economy has provided us, a large portion of those essential workers are immigrant born, or they are of immigrant status currently here in the country. Nationwide, you can see almost 17% of all healthcare workers they were either born here or they came over here at some point in their lives. Those essential workers are part of the immigrant communities that are in our state. And I think it makes it even more viable, not just healthcare, which it's vital all the time, but essentially now with this pandemic, when we hear shortages of beds and possibly equipment, what we need to focus on is there is an undercurrent of essential workers that are going there. And a large portion of those are made up of immigrant workers that are keeping those hospitals open, that are keeping that surgical center open. And these are dental hygienists, these are physician assistants, these are surgeons, these are everybody in the healthcare chain. These essential workers are impacting. Healthcare is huge. It's a really, really big portion of the economy that's essential, and that the immigrant population is powering for us. They're keeping it going. Another big one, and I think some of the data that New American Economy has found out, up around Westminster, about 17% of workers in the construction industry are from the immigrant population that, like I said, they were either born here or they have come here in some way, form or fashion, and they are working. So it's vital to everything that we're seeing in our communities. Another one that I think we will all, that I think some of your members, Juliet, will appreciate is you all may not have a farm or like a fruit and vegetable farm or a dairy farm that is sitting in the middle of Westminster. And I would think if you did have one, you might be a little bit upset about some of the smell coming off of it. But what you do, there is still a play and a nexus between that dairy farm or that fruit and vegetable farm and the grocery store that people in your communities are going to get their milk, their eggs, all of the staples that are essential to us to continue to live. Those stores, those food processing plants, a large percentage of those workers in those areas those jobs right now are being held by an immigrant population that without them, some of those facilities, let alone if the farm is able to still produce and give people the products that they want, if there aren't people working at the food processing plants, at the King Soopers, the Safeway, the Whole Foods, it doesn't matter. Without those workers in those areas, it just isn't working. So we're trying to make a push now. And I know I don't know, I'm assuming I'm not the only one who's heard there is an election on Tuesday that will determine some of how this goes. I think of the next steps in the federal conversation around immigration reform will hinge on Tuesday. And I think everybody is aware of that. But regardless of how Tuesday goes, there are some things that Congress can and should do regardless of who's in charge. That is things such as visa requirements. There are so many H-1B, H-2B, H-1A, H-2A, J visas. There are so many visas out there for a worker on a dairy farm, to a worker at a ski slope, to that skilled worker that a business in Westminster is hiring because they need them there for 3 months because their background in coding or in technology, they need that. But the way, with some of the restrictions on our visas and the caps that are put on them, it makes it extraordinarily hard when a nation of 350 million people, we're applying for 275,000 work visas in certain categories. There are things that Congress can do, and again, I will always say should do, outside of comprehensive reform, which is such a huge lift. There are some incremental, piecemeal things that I think as a community and a state that we could advocate to our federal delegation, such as the visa reform aspect of it. If you could give us some relief on the caps that are put on. If I hire as Brock, or if Juliet hires somebody and she's hired them as somebody who can come in and work on all of her technology needs. But then she also says, well, you're proficient in a certain sect of another area of my business that I would like for you to work on. There's no cushion within the visa program to allow Brock as a coder to come work for Juliet to do coding and maybe also to do some software design aspects or any number of areas. We've got to make it to where if Juliet hires me on a certain type of visa, I don't have to jump through all of these hoops in order to help Juliet on the other side of her business. And I think there are some real pressure points that Congress could give us. That comprehensive reform is a big ask. Anything, and I don't care if it's one party controlling all of Washington, D.C., it's still just a huge, huge ask. In the meantime, what I really think that we would like to focus on and push is what are some incremental steps that we can take to relieve some of this pressure and to acknowledge, like I said before, there is a growing amount of our essential workers, 10% and above in some areas, that are reliant on the immigrant population to fill those jobs. We cannot ignore it, nor should we, and we have to make a way and a space in order to have this conversation and have it in a way that kind of sucks some of the political air out of it and just talks about what's good for our state, what is good for our economy, and what's good for our families. Again, these are all people working and thriving in our communities. How do we have this conversation without completely turning it into a finger pointing, you don't like what I do, I don't like what you do? We really want to have a broad, in-depth conversation, and that really is what the Colorado Business Coalition for Immigration Solutions is wanting to have and to do. We've been talking to business associations, business groups all over the state. We just relaunched in September. So we're kind of making the pitch to folks of, once November 3rd hits, we've got to get a grip on everything else that's going on with this pandemic, how the election turns out, but we cannot, and I think because of the pandemic, we cannot ignore the issues that are surrounding immigration and the system that we have in place that is fundamentally outdated, and it just is not addressing the type of workforce that this country needs, nor the type of workforce that I think that Westminster needs. So that, in a nutshell, was a very quick way of kind of breaking down who we are, what we're up to. And again, I can send our website to Juliet. She can get it out. The New American Economy, they've got a page on their website specifically devoted to COVID and the immigration issue. That Map the Impact tool is amazing to look at and to break down again, the numbers in districts and around Colorado. So I'm happy to provide any of that information. And again, Julia, I really appreciate you and the Westminster Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to speak with you all today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Brock. And for those of you that have hopped on here, we have Brock Herzberg with us, who's visited on a number of items. We were talking specifically about the Colorado Business Coalition for Immigration Services, and he really delved into what that looks like specifically in Westminster, across the state of Colorado, immigration by the numbers. He cited the Colorado Compact, which was an initiative that was really kicked off and started a little bit back in 2012 or so with Bennett and LeBlanc. It really was bipartisan, because I do feel like our last kickoff, right, we had Gardner out there, we had Bennett virtually in there, and it's been that support, right? And that's what Brock has referenced, is immigration has been this issue that's been on the mind for over 30 years at the federal level, but not really necessarily there's been progress on it from that front. And so this is our effort to make change, because private sector solutions often come to fruition a lot faster than our other counterparts. I see with us Councillor DeMott on here. I also see Kristen, I see Dawn, and Oscar Gonzalez. Thank you all for hopping on here. Kristen is sharing great information, Brock. Thank you. So you have not bored anyone that's on this broadcast yet. Most of what Brock has actually commented, I have done my best to capture into quick nuggets into the comment section of this broadcast for folks, including the website that Brock has referenced for us. That is included as well. Councillor DeMott has shared a quick thank you for covering this topic as it relates to immigration reform. Of course, that it is something that's not just one section issue, that it does need a holistic solution. And I think that's whenever we start talking about comprehensive reform, that's what we're really trying to address, right? There are so many layers that are involved in it, and so many processes and opportunities. That's how we can see it, right? There's opportunities to change things, and every one small thing that you change really will have a larger ripple effect that's there. So, Brock, we also touched on elections, and of course, elections are next Tuesday. So for those of you that have not voted, you have until Tuesday. I believe it's a little too late to drop it in the mail right now, but you can still take it to your polling sites. Of course, last Wednesday, so a week ago, we had all of the candidates that we'd invited, Adams County, Jeffco County commissioners. We also had State House and State Senate that represent Westminster that were on here in nuggets of interviews. So if you have not already seen their videos, we're speculating on who you should consider casting your ballot to. Please go back and review those candidates that they shared, what their platform's all about, and see if this is a topic that would be on their mind. A lot of the questions that we asked them were very oriented around where they're coming from and their values, so you can easily transfer it over into some of these topics as well. Brock, I know this, I promised you that I would delve down into something that you shared, but this is not something that you that you shared. And I'm curious, because we talked on a little bit about essential workers and how, you know, a great percentage of them are from our immigrant population. That being said, do we know how that population has been affected by unemployment numbers, or in specific, you know, the more workforce changes that we have been seeing as of late with retail, with dining, that those have started closing down as well? I'd assume that there's a broader impact on them.
Yeah, and that's a really good question, especially because I had referenced that, you know, some of the higher numbers in the construction area, food services, in and around Westminster and the surrounding areas, about 17% of those workers, found by some of the data out of New American Economy, that is an immigrant status or immigrant population that are filling those jobs. As we've all seen and heard and been impacted or touched, that what we are going through is having a very big impact on unemployment numbers for everyone. Even with some of those workers, our restaurants are still up and going, food delivery services, which is a part of that as well, which there is some, again, part of that 18% of the immigrant population, part of that is food delivery services. So when restaurants shut down, we still had DoorDash, Postmates, Grubhub. That's still a part of that. But you are correct in that the the shutdown and the pandemic is having an effect on that. What we have found in the last probably 2 or 3 months, the governor has tried through, he has an office, the New American Integration Office, to try and help with issues of unemployment around these workers, to make sure that they're getting help and to make sure that they're able to access benefits and understand them in bilingual ways, that there is an opportunity for people that they can understand this in their language and not be blocked from it because of that, or not be afraid, I think is a better word, to get into the system and to apply for it because of a language barrier. So there are efforts going on, and I know the business community itself is looking at that. Not just, I think that they're looking at it from more of a holistic approach. Is there's just, jobs are just, some they were starting to come back. Now we're starting to see a little bit of a lag. I think it's just important for all of us to remember that everybody's going through this. And like I said, it is impacting a large swath of people, and the immigrant population is not immune from that. In the ag industry, which I'm fortunate enough to work within that space as well, Dairy Farmers of America is a great example. There are some jobs, and they are an agricultural operation. A dairy farm is an essential agriculture operation, that we have jobs now that we're seeing, and not just because of the pandemic, but before, that some of our jobs are not being filled, or only being filled by a certain sector of the immigrant population. And without them, it's like I said, some of those facilities, some of those farms would be shut down. So it's just a matter of keeping some of these businesses open and running, and not discounting the work of the essential workers that are going into some of these high-risk jobs. I don't want to demean any of the industries, but some of them, even the state considers a high-risk essential job. Food processing is one of those. I think some of the construction areas, but it's all critical to the economy for us to stay open. So I know, like I said, I know the state is working on it to make a space to where people are not trying to figure their way out of unemployment, but they're comfortable with doing that in order to access some of the benefits that everyone else is experiencing or benefiting from as well.
Wow, I really can keep talking to you, Brock. I've got so much, I've got so many questions and more ideas and things. Unfortunately, I only have to keep this to a 30-minute mark, which is always so hard when I get with some really engaging folks, and just like so excited to take on the world with you. Yeah. But for people that are interested in getting in contact with you, I know we referenced the cocompact.org webpage. Is there a phone number you want to leave, or anything else that they can touch base with you on?
Absolutely. And I'll just leave it with this. I am willing to come and speak to anybody, to any group, to any council, any trade association. I'm willing to, I am so passionate about this issue and for the people that it impacts, that I'm happy to talk with anybody. The only number I have is 303-945-1076. And my email is a great way to get a hold of me as well. It's my first name, BROCK, @ and this last part is all one word. It's capitalfocusllc.com, but it's CAPITOL, capital focus, FOCUS, LLC.com. Again, I'm willing to come and talk with anybody, town halls, Saturday morning coffees that people put on to get the word out. I'm happy to do that. It's an important issue, and I think with this pandemic and with the election next Tuesday, it will remain a critical issue for not just us locally, but nationally as well. So.
Absolutely. And it is. It's one of those issues that's national, but it does really affect us even on the local ground. So thank you so much for sharing your contact information. Stick with me as we close out. For those of you that have been tuning in, please share this out so folks can get the message of the importance of immigration, comprehensive immigration reform, what some of our businesses, organizations, associations, and chambers are doing to really get behind this effort, and how else folks can support us along the way. So make sure that you share that out. And also tune in with us tomorrow. We'll be back here at 11 a.m. speaking with the Woodrow Wilson Charter School and hearing more about how they're dealing with COVID and how that has impacted them. Of course, Brock, I appreciate you for fitting this into your day. So glad to learn that you are a Colorado native, such a rare breed. But I love your passion for this, and I'm excited as my wheels are turning to continue to work together to make sure that this issue gets some sort of solutions over the next several years. So stay with me as we close out. Thank you so much.
Yep.